Fantasy football doesn't always have to be hard. We don't have to make it that much more difficult on ourselves. And in the Big Board SuperFlex or any other SuperFlex tournament out there in best ball, fantasy football, FFPC, Underdog, any other platform, your home league, your home SuperFlex league, there's one really simple and easy way to crush your SuperFlex drafts and tournaments. Just stop drafting all those damn running backs early in the drafts. Pretty simple, pretty easy. We're going to get into it today. 0 running back in Superflex, and we're going to hop in a big board draft. Let's do it. Anyone that knows me, probably not the least bit surprised that we're talking not drafting running backs in a fantasy football or a best ball draft. But in all seriousness, diving into this Big Board SuperFlex tournament on Underdog, the main, what I would call kind of their main SuperFlex tournament that's out there right now, basically the main tournament out on Underdog leading up to the NFL draft. As of right now, they're frequently launching lots of new tournaments all the time. So, that can change. Who knows what kind of tournaments we will get leading up to the NFL draft. But as of now, we have a SuperFlex tournament to dive into. The strategy clearly changes drastically for SuperFlex. For anyone that has not played SuperFlex before, really super quick breakdown. What Underdog has done is remove a starting wide receiver position from your starting lineup. You draft the same amount of players, right now 20. You draft the same amount of players, but instead of starting 3 wide receivers, you take out a wide receiver and you add what they call a SuperFlex position, meaning any of your players can fill that SuperFlex starting lineup spot. Also quarterbacks. Everyone knows that quarterbacks are high scoring, high floor in particular, especially in half-point PPR. It's not DraftKings with 100-yard bonuses and all that. So your quarterbacks are especially the dual threat quarterbacks, are naturally going to score higher than the other positions. So you want to be filling out, obviously, your quarterback position with a quarterback, but your SuperFlex position with a quarterback, ideally. Of course, you don't really care. You want to score the most points, but usually the quickest route to the most points in the SuperFlex is with a quarterback. So you would think, well, dummy, let's just draft a bunch of the early quarterbacks, right? And I don't need to draft as many wide receivers. So pretty straightforward. Let's get these awesome quarterbacks, these awesome running backs, maybe an awesome tight end. And then I only need to get 2 wide receivers. Why do I need those guys? I can draft the other positions. That might make sense. Maybe if you're building a home league SuperFlex team and you're just trying to beat out, 8 to 10 of your league mates, go for it. In these tournaments, we're trying to finish first. We're trying to finish first out of, sorry, I should have had this pulled up. We're trying to finish first out of, here's the rankings. If I pop over to the main draft room and I go over, you see the Big Board SuperFlex, 56,160 teams. We got to finish first out of that, right? We're trying to take home, as I scroll here, there's a $100,000 top prize. Even if I get 10th, right? Scroll down just a little bit more. I get 10th. That's $4,000. That's amazing. Everyone wants to turn $10 into $4,000. But that's still 10th. If only 9 people can beat you in this whole tournament just to get $4,000. Scroll a little bit further, right? Okay, so you get 100th out of 56,000 people. Getting 100th place, that's awesome. $400. And again, turning $10 into $400 is great, but turning $10 into $400 when you made the final, you had one of the best teams possible, it's probably a little underwhelming. That's not what you're hoping for when you're shooting for this first place prize of 100,000. So the goal is to finish first or give ourselves the best shot into first place as possible. And so what I believe to be the most advantageous way to take advantage of the ADPs and everything that exists in SuperFlex is actually 0 running back. Shocker, I know. Everyone knows that I am a big fan of the 0 running back strategy, but in particular, in the Big Board SuperFlex, I really do think that zero running back is probably the greatest edge that exists because of, let me go over to the rankings really quick so we can take a look at ADP. If I go over to the ADP, see I'm over on the SuperFlex ADP, look where all the quarterbacks are going, right? Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, Fields, Burrow, Herbert, Lawrence, Lamar, all in the first round. Deshaun Watson, sometimes in the first round, depending upon the draft room you're in. Dak Prescott, sometimes in the first round, depending upon the draft room you're in, right? Tua is almost in the first. Daniel Jones is firmly a second rounder, probably creeps up to the beginning of the second, depending upon the room that you're in, right? And we just look at some of these quarterbacks that are double-digit round picks in these other formats. If you want quarterbacks, depending upon the room that you're in, if you want quarterbacks, you have to pay for them. And you do need some kind of quarterback play. Now, we'll definitely talk as we hop into the draft about maybe some ways that we can dive into the quarterback position and win without spending all of our early round picks on quarterbacks. But you are going to need quarterback scoring, right? All of our league mates are going to be having probably quality scores in the quarterback and the superflex quite often, given these ADPs. Everybody's taking all the best quarterbacks very, very early. And so how can we gain an edge, still produce quality scores at every single position? And in particular, when it comes to that end of the season, right, we're trying to win that $100,000, have our players peaking at that time of the season. Zero running back allows us to find running backs given their depressed ADPs, right? So you think to a normal last year. Now, I know Christian McCaffrey doesn't go 101 this season, and technically he didn't really go 101 last year, but some people might have had him as their 101, right? Him and Jonathan Taylor, you see at the top of the running back list. 10th or 11th overall for CMC. JT barely makes it into the second round. So this then has a cascading effect down the rest of the running back pool, right? I can get quote unquote zero RB targets that are not really zero RB targets. As I scroll, look at some of these names. And I'm not saying, I'm not, putting the stamp of approval on any of these names in particular. They're just a reference point. Najee Harris going in the 50s in ADP. Dalvin Cook almost into the 70s. Aaron Jones in the 70s. Jahmyr Gibbs, the RB2 rookie prospect, almost in the 80s. Miles Sanders now set for a big workload with Carolina in the 80s. J.K. Dobbins also in the 80s. DeAndre Swift and David Montgomery, say whatever you want about them. Pick your poison. Draft them both. I don't care. In the 90s. Joe Mixon, who has been a second-round pick, a 1-2 turn pick most seasons. Samaje Perine now gone for Cincinnati. Joe Mixon, 93rd overall. Cam Akers, probably my favorite guy. Cam Akers comes on super, super strong down the stretch last year and actually proves maybe that third-round pick that people were spending on him last year, not so crazy. Now should get Stafford back, cut back. Rams kind of recharging the offense, retooling, if you will. But they don't. It's him and Kyron Williams right now in the backfield. Cam Akers set for a workhorse role that you can get in the 97 ADP. So how does this all come together, right? Okay, I'm going to get my quarterbacks. I understand now I have some really appealing running backs pushed way down the board. But how does it come together from a roster construction standpoint? Well, because you and everyone know that wide receiver is devalued across the board, you can still get the elite production at wide receiver without having to spend like that first round pick, even maybe sometimes your second round pick, right? You can still get those quarterbacks or a elite quarterback if you want. You can do so many different things and still spend these early picks on some of these wide receivers, right? Give me Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, AJ Brown, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Give me those guys, and then I only need to take a couple of the elite wide receivers. A lot of the times, for me personally, I'm taking like 5 total wide receivers, taking some extra quarterbacks, maybe 2 to 3 tight ends, maybe just one if I take Kelsey. Tight end's a little bit peculiar, but I know that I can just load up on all of these zero running back targets, and some now that are going to skyrocket in value, right? There's rookies. There's guys who still haven't signed that are free agents there's things that are going to change even between now and, the summer when we're actually drafting for Best Ball Mania and other tournaments. And I'm going to get supreme value out of these running backs, right? I'm thinking about, he's been in our little circles, our little sicko circles in best ball. The Israel Abanikanda, the Pitt running back in this year's NFL draft class, has really skyrocketed up boards here in this Big Board SuperFlex tournament. But like, he's one example. Like, what if he goes much earlier than we think? What if he goes to a team where he ends up as the starting running back and he's available super late here because of the time of year that we're drafting? There's going to be guys back here, right? If the Bengals don't get another running back, Joe Mixon is not going this late at running back when we get to May. Sorry to tell you, I don't think Cam Akers is going to go this late regardless, but same thing. If they don't add a running back, Cam Akers isn't going back here. Honestly, the Falcons, if Tyler Algier, if they don't add a running back, he's not going this late. Maybe Zach Charbonnet is the starting running back for a certain team, right? People are very worried about Rashad Penny, which I kind of find a little funny given his upside. But look at all these. Alvin Kamara, say what you want about his legal troubles and kind of general decline of play overall, but 120th overall. 120th. Damian Harris, now the new hammerback for the Bills. Probably going to score some freaking touchdowns being that type of a runner that he is, and on the Buffalo Bills. 130th overall. You can just stockpile a bunch of these awesome running back picks, some of which are awesome as standalone guys, some of which we'll get to a little bit more. I'm writing up our core picks for this SuperFlex, for all SuperFlex tournaments, but it's obviously a little bit geared towards the big board. You have guys like Jerome Ford. He's a guy I'm kind of putting my stamp on. I'm flag planting Jerome Ford, but because right now he's the backup to Nick Chubb. I'm not expecting that he's going to have a ton of standalone value, frankly. Jerome Ford, you never know. Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson, these guys had standalone value alongside Nick Chubb. I prefer Nick Chubb, obviously, but Nick Chubb goes in the third round. I can get A.J. Brown, right? The A.J. Browns of the world, or a quarterback, or another elite wide receiver. And then I have these contingent value running backs like a Jerome Ford, right? Like let's see down here. Donta Foreman is not necessarily a contingent value guy, right? But all these guys could be. Jaylen Warren had emerged down the stretch in Pittsburgh. I can stockpile all these guys who are going to naturally rise in ADP in other formats and have a loaded running back room and take advantage of the format with the wide receivers by still winning wide receiver with the superstars. Just give me the superstars, right? Give me these awesome elite wide receivers, and I don't need very many of them. Then I just stockpile these running backs. The running backs are going to obviously fill my 2 running back spots, but they can also help me. That depth of running back down the board can help me in the flex. The super flex can help me in a lot of positions, and you just can't get the wide receiver late that offers you. Of course, there's always, I do like some wide. Tyquan Thornton is one of my guys, right there. There are some interesting wide receivers that could, of course, break out into a much higher tier, but generally speaking, because the wide receivers don't get the same kind of contingent value that that running backs get a contingent. Right when Chris Carson went down 2 years ago, Rashad Penny was the guy you needed for Seattle because he was the man now with Chris Carson gone, right? When Devin Singletary became the workhorse for the Bills because they just said, you know what, Zach Moss, you stink. Devin Singletary, we trust you. You're going to play every snap. Right? Those kind of things happen when if something happens to Christian McCaffrey, God forbid, Eli Mitchell, like an absolute smash, they become like first or second round picks in terms of their weekly projection and weekly upside. That doesn't, very rarely an Amon-Ra St. Brown or a Justin Jefferson pop up from way back there. But even then, now we're much smarter about how we handle some of the young rookies or young breakout wide receivers. You just can't get that level of upside late, but you can get that level of upside, especially weeks 15, 16, and 17, where we know it's chaos. We know that there's going to be injured running backs. We know that there's going to be some of these contingent value things play out there. And we know that the elite wide receivers, of course, if they have to stay healthy, but I also only need 2. Technically, I only need 2 of those guys to be there and pop for me as the elite wide receivers in those playoff rounds. And it allows me to create the highest upside overall team. I'm going to have good quarterbacks because I'm not, hurting at that position. You have to navigate, right? You gotta play. It's a little game of hopscotch. You got a double dutch, I guess it would be. You gotta figure out when to hop in on quarterback and when to hop out. But you're able to attack quarterback. You're able to get superstar wide receivers, and you're able to get a loaded running back, like running back rooms that you can draft now in this format. You won't be able to get even though you're waiting, right? You can put together a running back room of Joe Mixon, Cam Akers, and Eli Mitchell, and my guy Jerome Ford, and some rookies, right? You like Abanikanda, you like Charbonnet. Do you like Antonio Gibson to come out this year? Samaje Perine with Javonte having that serious injury, right? Maybe you still like Brian Robinson, Damian Harris, the aforementioned. You can create a running back room of like 8 of these guys because you're not spending that many picks on wide receiver. And so it's a little bit of a unique blend of zero running back, and the way the ADPs have shaken out in this particular tournament, it's ripe. It's absolutely ripe for zero running back. So I do really like a couple of the early round running backs, but I think generally across my portfolio, my strategy is going to be almost entirely zero running back. And then, mixing and matching which elite quarterbacks I'm taking, mixing in some Travis Kelce, mixing through all the elite wide receivers, and then just giving myself a million shots on goal with these running backs that all have a ton of upside, absolutely a ton of upside. I think you'll find that if you draft, let's go to wide receiver. If you draft Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave or Amon-Ra St. Brown or someone like that, plus Cam Akers, or insert your running back of choice in those mid to late rounds. If you have this little 2v2 decision, and you say, give me Amon-Ra St. Brown and Joe Mixon versus, let's go to the running backs here, versus Kenneth Walker and let's check out a wide receiver in the 90s. Kenneth Walker and Treylon Burks. Kenneth Walker and Brandon Cooks. I like Kenneth Walker. And I don't even hate some of these wide receivers, right? I like Jahan Dotson just fine. But when you do that comparison between those two, which one would you prefer? It's pretty clear to me when you look at just a weekly projection, but also a ceiling projection. Joe Mixon scored 1 million touchdowns in a game in a game this year. He can be the RB1. No offense to Brandon Cooks, even on the Cowboys, he can have a good year. But he can't match what the superstar wide receivers can do. Sorry, we froze up there just a smidge. All right, now that we talked through that, it's time to put it into practice in a draft. See if we can fill this puppy real quick. One more. You psychos. Were you waiting? Were you guys sitting in this room already and waiting? Looks like we're filled. Looks like a lot of badges. Let me zoom. Definitely friends and family. Dorado, Felix. Lots of badges. And agree. Jake says, smash that like button. Rob says, smash that like button. Yeah, they were the leeches, Ben, were hanging out already in the draft room waiting for it to fill. There might be an overflow. I don't know if there's anybody else watching, other people that might have tried to get in. There might be an overflow draft room. I imagine that we can fill another one with the people watching. And you guys can let us know how that one's going while we're talking this one through. So this is an interesting picking at the end. Mid to late in the first round, which is where I'm drafting out of the 108, is always super interesting because you're gonna get to see. I really got to remember to. You see that I need to log into my Spike. I got to remember to use Firefox instead of Chrome so that I have my overlays working I'm falling into the trap of Rob. Yeah, this is, as he said, excited to watch you draft from the worst spot in a Superflex draft. 108 is just terrible. You're never gonna get one of the elite quarterbacks, and then if you don't take that next tier of quarterback, right? If you don't take the second tier, what happens? Are you just going to lock yourself out of quarterback? See, you're the first 4 picks, all quarterbacks. Are you gonna go more of a zero quarterback, or are you gonna take a lesser elite guy in the first freaking round? Right? It's like, am I gonna take Joe Burrow over Justin Jefferson? I mean, Joe Burrow obviously goes there, but it's like that's always such a difficult thing. I'm not saying I have the right answer, but I'm saying if you if you use our ranks, you're definitely going to be getting more of some of these later quarterbacks and more of the Justin Jeffersons of the world. That is for sure. So I'm interested to see how this, what does that say? NASCAR recruiter? Oh, no. NASA recruiter. Must be going to the moon. That's a sweet name. NASA recruiter. Let's see. All right. On the clock. 7 straight quarterbacks off the board. And I'm taking Justin Jefferson. I told you, I'm not taking Justin Herbert over Justin Jefferson. I don't care about the format. Duvey, I assume this Duvey. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. Duvey says going with this strategy, a late draft position is preferred. No. So that is part of the counterpoint is obviously it's very dependent upon how your room shakes out. It's a little uncomfortable when the entire rest of the room is smashing all these quarterbacks because you do like it's a balancing act, right? You want to get value. You don't want to just chase the position because everyone else is chasing it, but you also do still have to create a team that can score enough points to win. So it's a really delicate balancing act. It's like not the same thing, but a little bit similar to, it happens in a lot of spike week drafts. Our friends over at Ship Chasing, right, have the really wide receiver heavy rooms. You can say, well, they're all going to go wide receiver heavy, so I'm gonna zig when they zag and go the opposite direction, right? It would be going away from quarterbacks in that it would be going, I was kind of hoping Dak would fall. In that it would be going away from wide receivers, but you can get locked out of the position and just build a bad team, even though you're going against the grain, right? So it's definitely that delicate balancing act. All right, so see here, we're just going to keep on. I'm taking Tyreek. I think if I can figure out how to make quarterback work here, obviously the format of this show, I'm not really interested in the early running backs. Quite frankly, outside of Travis Kelce, I also don't particularly care about tight end. I have a lot of punt tight ends I'm willing to invest in, and I'm not going to draft very many wide receivers, so it gives me some extra flexibility at tight end. So I'm not really worried about that position. So I'm really just balancing how to attack quarterback with these wide receivers. If you can figure out how to create a good quarterback room and you have Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill at wide receiver, I think you're in pretty good shape come playoff time. That's good. Ben says, I take Lamar and Trevor Lawrence before I take Jefferson, etc. And then I either pivot to Dak or Tyreek and Kupp. Yeah, I think how you handle that tier, let me pull back up the board. Sorry. How you handle, right? There's definitely a clear top 3. I think Fields is sorry, my dogs are annoying each other. I think Fields is a fairly clear 4th. But then even after that, obviously I really love Lamar, but we can say we draft for upside, but drafting a player 5th or 6th overall who probably actually has questions about whether he's even going to play this season, it is a factor. So I think you get to Burrow, Lamar, Lawrence, definitely Herbert, those guys, Dak. It's like you're just taking a quarterback to fill out the position, and of course they're good. No, I'm not certainly not hating on Dak or any of those guys, but they're not game-changing players at the position. They do have somewhat replaceable projections, like on a weekly basis. If you hit on a later guy, like if you hit on Daniel Jones last year, if you had Daniel Jones versus having Justin Herbert and Dak, and Like, it didn't matter. You would rather have the Jefferson plus Daniel Jones, right? Obviously, Daniel Jones is going in the second of these, but you get the point if you find this year's Daniel Jones. Good question. Adam says, what round do you need to draft your first running back for it to be considered zero RB? It's a great question, and I'll give you a half answer. There is definitely no specific round that you have to draft your first running back. We have to create, like when we're doing content or like we build those things into our tools, you have to create some kind of definition in terms of the content and the tools, but really the strategy has no specific round like markers. You could have a zero running back team with the first running back in the 6th round. You could have a zero running back team with the first running back in the 11th round. It is more so just about kind of essentially waiting on running back, right? Loading up more running backs in terms of quantity that you draft and spending your elite picks, your highest end picks on the other positions. And so I think it generally is going to be somewhere between, like a lot of zero running back teams are going to be maybe round 7 to 10 is where your first running back is taken. But again, that's flexible. Like if you said this is a zero running back team and I took my first running back at the 602, like it's totally fine. Or if you said I'm going really crazy zero RB and my first running back isn't until round 12, and then I'm just going to load up on all these guys. Ooh. I think I have Devontae Smith as my next highest ranked player. I'm trying to look at what quarterback looks like here. I'm going to take Devontae Smith. I don't even have my own rankings memorized. I should probably memorize those. I'm trying to double check and see so that I'm not going against what I put out there. You just polished up these SuperFlex rankings the other day. Let's see here. Yes, because Garrett Wilson was gone, right? Yeah. Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith, and Chris Olave are all right next to each other in these rankings. So I'm sure Olave will not make it back. Let's look at the quarterback landscape. Good God. Awful. Yeah, see, the problem for me with Goff, Ben says Goff could be this year's Danny Dimes. The problem for me with Goff is he just has to run so pure because there's zero rushing, like literally zero rushing. And I love the Lions. I'm drafting tons of the Lions, but now Goff is kind of expensive. You know what I mean? So I think that's part of the problem for me with this. Is also okay. Thank God for taking. All right, now I'm taking Olave. So we're going to have a zero running back, zero quarterback team here, which will be kind of fun, actually. And we can see the power of having freaking Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Smith, and Chris Olave. Like, theoretically, you could probably stop with these 4 wide receivers. And I might. We'll see how the rest of this draft shakes out. But, like, I think you could theoretically stop with these 4 wide receivers and just say, between these 4, they're going to fill out my 2 wide receiver spots. They'll mix in elsewhere depending upon how their big games come together. So, but this is what you can get when you just kind of let the room come to you, right? I could have taken Herbert or something like that. But I think I'm fairly confident in a good clip of these later quarterbacks, and then I'll take a bunch of them, and I'm probably going to take maybe 3 late round tight ends and a whole boatload of running backs. 4 or 5 quarterbacks, 3 tight ends. So let's just say for funsies, we take 5 quarterbacks on this team because I don't have one yet. And I'm going to take 3 tight ends, right? Tight end is the one thing where I understand, the arguments for being crazy, taking just 4 with your last 4 picks or something like that. But particularly in this format, I just need the quarterback, like what the quarterback can bring to you and what the running backs can bring to you is just so much more important that I'm still really, even when I'm punting the position, and it's just such a low scoring position. Like, even if you hit on that tight end, the argument would be, oh, if I hit on that tight end, particularly in week 17, I got more shots on it to find the one tight end who scores 20 points. But like, you also don't have to have, the absolute stone nuts at tight end, in my opinion, but you're going to have, right, the quarterback that scores 40 or the wide receiver that scores 40. So I'll still probably only draft 3 tight ends. So anyway, let's just call it 5 quarterbacks on this team, because I'm clearly not going to have very many good ones and may not have that many that are even starting at the start of the season. Let's say 5 quarterbacks, 3 tight ends. That's 8. If I stick with these 4 wide receivers, I'm still getting 8 running backs and probably some pretty good ones. So like, that's still a really, really strong team that you can build if you start with this 0 running back start. Right? If I had started with some if I had a top 3 pick, I'd have a freaking quarterback or 2 on my team. Very fitting that Trey Lance is already up there on the board. I definitely got a plan of what I want to do here, I think. Yeah. All right. It's Anthony Richardson time. I have Anthony Richardson ranked ahead of the other rookies and ahead of all these other quarterbacks here on my board. He is, which is just posted on spikeweek.com. The core picks. He is one of 3 quarterbacks that are core picks for me/us in SuperFlex drafts. And it's really pretty simple, particularly on this type of a team where I'm chasing points at quarterback, right? Everybody else has better quarterbacks than me. Everybody. I need to find the guys that can pop and far exceed this draft cost, right? Because I'm going to have awesome wide receivers. I believe in the running back room you can put together with the 0 RB structure, but I need to find quarterbacks that can pop up here for me, right? That can emerge from back here with real upside. Like, I don't really have a problem with Stafford, Pickett, right? Those guys, but they're just like clicking on them and praying to get 18 or 20 points. Like, you can mix in a guy or 2 like that as well. But what I really need to win this tournament on this team is to find the guy who is bringing real upside. And I have no idea how Anthony Richardson is going to be in the NFL. I don't know where he's going to be drafted. I don't know when he's going to start or if he's going to start this year. But I know that based on his athleticism, archetype, physical tools, and draft capital, all these things, he is going to have a massive, massive ceiling when and if he's on the field. And so I need that on these kinds of teams. And those are the kinds of players I want to draft in best ball. It's really funny that Lance is too. Sorry. I just saw, there goes. So I'm actually going to take CJ Stroud. I know I'm taking CJ Stroud over Lance, but I need to keep my Lance stuff. It's still not even May yet. I'm really not ready to dive into the Trey Lance debates. We've already had way too many of them this season. All right, let me scroll for the board. Zoom out by 1 so we can see the whole thing. There we go. Let's see. Love Stars. Is that like it's like Monstars, but Love Stars, like a much kinder Space Jam 3 version or something. I drafted a lot of early teams where the QBs were going way further down the draft board. Those teams are so much stronger than what I'm able to build now. Yeah, I agree. I think I might have been in the very first draft, or like it was either the first or the second Big Board SuperFlex draft, and it was the same thing. I was able to get some of these quarterbacks a little later. I do think I built better teams, but that doesn't mean there's not that many of those teams, and it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be better. You just do have to think about how you structure. Right. This is why I like this 0 RB approach. This is why I'm willing to take these shots on, let's build a team with Anthony Richardson, right? CJ Stroud. If you like Trey Lance, Jordan Love goes off the board here, right? Bryce Young, Kyler Murray, right? Building quarterback rooms with those guys, I think is good to have in your portfolio, and just being really thoughtful about how you structure your teams. Now that you know that kind of the first day was a lot different in terms of quarterbacks. It doesn't mean that these teams are going to necessarily be worse. They're just going to be very different for sure. Yeah, ain't this the truth? Felix takes Najee Harris. Good thing you won $1 million. Literally trying to punt it off, drafting Najee every goddamn season. It's going to be glorious when we'll do an in-season draft. I'll bring Felix on when Jaylen Warren is the starting running back for the Steelers and Najee's his backup. Tuvi says, swapping wide receiver 4 for a tight end 1 feels better to me. So it's a totally reasonable comment. The counter is that the draft doesn't. So this would be kind of, I would rather spend that capital to fill out my starting position at tight end, which is, again, totally reasonable. There's nothing wrong with the non-Kelsey elite tight ends. However, the draft doesn't really give you what you always necessarily want or need in your lineup, right? So this will be funny. So there's clearly 2 guys lining up for me here, one of which might answer your tight end thing, which would actually be, hold on a second. Okay, so there goes Pickett. So I'm taking Kyle Pitts again. I just said I didn't want to talk about Trey Lance yet again, and here we are taking Trey Lance, or taking Kyle Pitts, basically the same thing. But to that point, the draft doesn't always, and the player pool doesn't give you what your starting lineup needs all the time, especially at tight end, where, it's so low scoring. You can just punt off the tight end position, guarantee yourself this superstar wide receiver group, and not have to draft very many wide receivers. And so you don't have George Kittle. That's okay. It's totally fine. You can win with late round tight ends. Happens all the time. There's a lot to be said for going QB. Yeah, for sure. The problem is that if everyone's going QB, how do you beat 30,000 other QB teams in this tournament? With the same, you're going to have lots of the same combinations. You're not going to have any, right? What if Justin Jefferson is the guy you need, right? Where? I know we're reaching here, but I got to get one of my guys, Sam Howell. I really don't understand why Sam Howell's going so late. But again, I also understand. So we built out a quick little QB room here of Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, and Sam Howell to go with the 4 wide receiver start of Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, and then Kyle Pitts at tight end. I understand, just like I understand it's we'll definitely be getting into this for the next 4 months, 5 months, whatever. Aren't you worried about Anthony Richardson not playing this year? Aren't you worried about Washington going to Jacoby Brissett? Sure. Yes. I mean, I'm very well aware that there is a relative amount of risk in Sam Howell, given the fact that they haven't put the starting label on him. They haven't said this Sam Howell is our right. He has to earn it. But it's Jacoby Brissett. If Sam Howell can't beat out Jacoby Brissett, then so be it. Whatever. But I know that Sam Howell has he's in a pretty good situation. Carson Wentz was putting up some monster spike weeks at the beginning. Now, it's because they were losing by $1 billion and throwing every down. But still, Carson Wentz was putting up some big games. Taylor Heineke has put up big games in the past. Is Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel. We'll see what shakes out at tight end. Good running backs. Pretty reasonable offensive line. Good offensive line, I believe. I got to catch up on the Washington Commanders offensive line offseason. But And then Howell is a borderline elite rusher at the quarterback position. He's not like Lamar or Anthony Richardson in terms of like pure athleticism. So I don't think people view him quite like they should, but he ran for 800 and something yards and 11 touchdowns in his final year. He started one game last year, scored almost 20 fantasy points despite only throwing 19 passes in a win. They beat the Cowboys in a win for Washington in one Howell start because he ran for 35 yards and a touchdown. And so the power of someone that runs like that in a good offense, especially, it's just like, dude, in this format, like I don't care if he has risk in terms of that actual starting job. I care about at this cost when everyone else is right. We talked about Jared Goff, and I'm not even sitting here trying to dunk on Jared Goff. Jared Goff won the second round. Jared Goff is a second round pick. Jared Goff went before Devontae Adams and A.J. Brown and Austin Eckler, the RB1 from last year, right? Jared Goff, right? Kirk Cousins goes high. Derek Carr is a fourth round pick. And I'm not arguing really for or against those guys. But again, if I'm 2v2ing, if Sam Howell and Anthony Richardson, maybe CJ Stroud or Trey Lance or whatever, those guys hit, I want Howell plus Tyreek Hill rather than Jared Goff and Brandon Ayuk. So it's just kind of always that, of course they could miss. They can miss. That's part of the risk. But it's not that I don't care about the risk, but in terms of how am I going to go try to win this tournament, that goes back to the oh man, the day one ADPs were, oh baby. I mean, I got to take Ritter. What's going on, guys? You're really going to gift me? I tried to go zero quarterback and make things really gross with some crappy backups later, and I got Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Sam Howell, and Desmond Ritter, plus an elite tight end and air quotes elite, and in Kyle Pitts. He's elite in Madden or something, not in fantasy football, but Kyle Pitts and those four wide receivers. Now it's just freaking running back time, baby. B. Kurt says Swift is the layup in the 8th. Yep. I like Swift. I also like David Montgomery. The Lions running backs going in the 8th because we're worried about workload seems like overthinking it again. But again, that isn't that a perfect reason to damn it. Oh, I was going to be very excited to start this team with Rashad Penny. I'm just going to add a couple of guys to the queue because I don't care that much right now. Let me look at the running backs. I am actually going to take Khalil Herbert, as weird as that may sound, over James Cook. But I would like to keep my a little bit of flexibility open. Because if I had a 2v2, James Cook plus who I was seeing a little bit down here, and I like some of these guys, of course, but it was like James and I'm going to say this and someone's going to take Damian Harris, but I was like, if I'm going to get one of the Bills running backs, give me Damian Harris and Khalil Herbert over James Cook and Brian Robinson as an example. So one thing that does suck a little bit about this format, I don't want to say it sucks. It's a little bit more difficult to create stacks. It's also a little more difficult to create the stacks when you go zero quarterback or zero running back, because I'm only going to have, okay, if I'm not getting Kirk Cousins early, not going to have a stack there. Tua goes in the second round, Tua goes next to Tyreek, not going to get a stack there. Obviously Hurts goes in the first round, not going to get a stack there. Carr, I guess technically I could have created the Carr stack, but I did get Ritter with Pitts. And Ritter is another one. Like, look, I don't think Desmond Ritter is good. I don't think he's going to be a great NFL quarterback, but I don't care. It's fantasy football. He does run. He has pretty good weapons. He has a head coach who we hate because all they did was run the ball. They did throw more with Ritter after Mariota got benched because Mariota was just a god-awful passer. There's reason to believe Arthur Smith is going to throw a little bit more, right? What does any of that mean? I don't know, but Desmond Ritter is a dual threat quarterback with pretty good weapons and a pretty decent offense going in the hundreds in Superflex. But Jared Goff goes in the second round? Like what? Marcus Mariota was putting up fantasy points. He was horrible. Trust me, I drafted a lot of Marcus Mariota last year. I watched a lot of Falcons games because I drafted a lot of Kyle Pitts. He was terrible in real life football. Horrible. His passing was some of the most abominable shit I ever saw in my entire life last year. And the dude was dropping 20 fantasy points a week because he runs. And so in this format, I have 4 quarterbacks that can go put up 20 or more. God forbid if Richardson or Howell or Ritter pops, or Stroud. Obviously, Stroud not as much of a runner, but he's not incapable of scrambling some. But also, he could just be a good passer. Much better. I mean, he could go first overall might end up being first overall in the draft. So anyway, let's see. Yeah, this is funny. Al says Jacoby Brissett has that boot. Everywhere Jacoby Brissett goes, he ends up starting. That is true. Love Star says, I just force stacks and make up the ADP with sliding players. I built some nasty lineups. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But for me in this particular draft, it wasn't really possible. What was I supposed to do? I don't have a quarterback, and I'm only probably going to draft these 4 wide receivers. So there's no real way for me to force a stack. But getting Ritter to Pitts is nice. Plus, that's the other thing with drafting runners. Again, Stroud, not really a runner, but Howell, Richardson, Ritter. Doesn't really matter if you have the stack. All right, so we're sitting 4 quarterbacks. That's the other funny thing about this format is you're like totally, you don't even flinch. Like, all right, it's the 11th round and you have 4 quarterbacks, and it's like normal. Very strange. 4 quarterbacks: Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Sam Howell, and Desmond Ridder. And see, the other nice thing about this is I feel comfortable stopping there. So we're going to have a whole boatload of running backs, baby. If you like running backs, we are 45 minutes into this. Now's your time. If you enjoy drafting running backs, this is the time to tune into the show. Yeah, we're gonna Samaje Perine this baby up. DFSR, is Hooker still available? I assume so. Yeah. So an ADP of, obviously, the other thing about these drafts is that you can look at ADP. It's all well and good. And it is important to get a gauge. But like particularly at so quarterback dictates everything. You get in a room where people are drafting all the quarterbacks ahead of ADP. If you go look and you're like, oh yeah, well, Anthony Richardson has an ADP of 68. Well, yeah, but every other quarterback went before ADP. You can't just think that Anthony Richardson's going to go at his ADP too. And so I'm not saying that's the case with Hooker, but your comment just made me think about that. Yeah, let me make this pick and then I'll have a little break and we can talk through some of these running backs. See, this is such a good now I'm a little mad I took Khalil Herbert because I would probably take Foreman here. But I'm just going to take Eli Mitchell. Like, I'll talk about Mitchell and then we'll double back to Perine. Christian McCaffrey is Christian McCaffrey. You're not getting a negative thing for me about Christian McCaffrey, certainly not on the 49ers. When Eli Mitchell came back last year, still Christian McCaffrey's backfield. But I've heard a bunch of sentiment that like, oh, once Christian McCaffrey, was there, Eli Mitchell didn't really get to play and he only played in garbage time. Like he got some garbage time run, but like he was playing when he came back and Christian McCaffrey was there. This is not a 95% of snaps and touches for Christian McCaffrey backfield. Once Eli Mitchell was back, it was, let's call it 70-30. Even if you want to say 75 CMC, 25 Mitchell. Like that's still a role. And he was getting the ball at the goal line a little bit. Like we know if something happens to CMC, Eli Mitchell is a stone cold smash in this offense. We saw it, right? He was like an absolutely incredible running back in his rookie season when healthy. Now he has health concerns, but you're also getting him now in the 12th round as a running back on maybe one of the best rushing offenses in the NFL. They're not quite the Browns or the Falcons, frankly. But, one of the best rushing offenses in the NFL, a good football player who has proven monster upside and who proved some level of standalone value, right? He's probably going to have weeks where he scores a touchdown, 50 yards and a touchdown, even with CMC in there. And if something happens to CMC, Yahtzee, right? You have a second round pick that you got in the 12th round. Pirine is almost a little bit of the inverse, where I think Pirine's going to have a pretty big board. I think it's possible Javonte starts the season on the pup, or is very limited at the start of the season. Two reasons. One, I think this could also almost end up being a reset year for the Broncos. They brought in Sean Payton. The roster's not very good. They can get out from underneath Russ after this year. And they also probably need to know if they need to get out from Russ underneath this year. But Javonte, had a very serious knee injury. And I think that they play it slow with him in a year that they are more so kind of trying to understand, right? They're already shopping Judy and Sutton. They just traded away some defenders last year. They brought in Sean Payton. They don't have a draft capital. I think it could be a little bit of not a rebuild, kind of like a Rams retool season for the Broncos. And so they brought in Pirine, and they've talked about it. There was a quote I saw today that was like, given how our running back room is and with Javonte's injury, Pirine was extremely important for us to get. He's just a reliable old back who does what he does in between the tackles. He's not super explosive, but he pass protects. He catches passes. If he's going, I think he's going to play a big role. And then who knows? Maybe Javonte just, isn't really the guy for most of the year. Who knows? Like I said, I don't know, but it's certainly possible. All right, we're going to take a shot on seeing another nice thing about this 0 RB in this format is I know I'm going to take a boatload of running backs, right? And I was lucky in this particular draft to be able to get the quarterbacks that I got. But so I have Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Devonta Smith, and Chris Olave. And I actually have 4 quarterbacks that I feel good about. And then Kyle Pitts, right? I have again, air quotes, elite tight end. But I could stick with 2 tight ends and 4 quarterbacks and 4 wide receivers and draft 10 freaking running backs on this team. Is that overkill? I don't know. We'll see what quarterbacks are available later, right? But I know my running backs are really bad. My first running back is Khalil Herbert. So I know I'm going to need to mix and match through it, but that allows me to mix and match through all these, right? Samaje Perine probably comes out of the gates hot. In the playoffs, we'll see. I like Khalil Herbert just in general, but Khalil Herbert is, competing with Donta Foreman, and who knows what's going on with Travis Homer, but he's competing with Donta Foreman for work. I think they're probably mostly going to split. But again, Khalil Herbert's super efficient. I expect both of them to be super efficient. And so he has standalone value, and then he has huge contingent value upside. Same thing for Eli Mitchell. Some standalone value, huge contingent value. Devin Achane, who knows? It's a mystery box. It could be anything, including a running back. And so I'm just going to cycle through some of those guys, these rookie lottery tickets. And then, see, now we're gonna take Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren is like the dollar store Eli Mitchell. He's gonna. I'm sorry to tell you, to all the Najee people, Felix earmuffs. Okay, earmuffs. Jaylen Warren's gonna play. Najee's not playing every snap like he did in his rookie season. Jaylen Warren earned work, and he continued to earn more work as the season went on. Doesn't mean you can't draft Najee. Not actually trying to dunk on Najee, but I'm saying Jaylen Warren is good at football and earned a role on the Steelers offense. I would almost guarantee there is a better chance that this is a 50-50 backfield than this is that Najee completely dominates, right, and gets 90% of the work. So yeah, earmuffs. Just we'll timestamp that one for the people who love Najee to fast forward through the Najee FUD. B. Kurt says, Jeff. I turned redneck there for just 2 seconds. We got to Jeff Wilson is kind of a redneckish name, so I guess that I just read it in a Midwest Hoosier, redneck twang there. Jeff Wilson has a lower ADP than Mostert. Surprising with Jeff Wilson getting more money. Yeah, I think we just saw a little bit more of Mostert as the guy there. And I think people just like Mostert's still very fast, right? He kind of has that profile that's a little sexier. I would treat him about the same. I think maybe I might have them right next to each other in the ranks. Again, I just put these together. Superflex is still new, so please forgive me if I don't have every single player memorized where I got them going here. But I think that they're both about the same. Definitely the money is something to think about, but if you wanted to put Jeff Wilson a little bit ahead of Mostert, I think that that's totally fine. Okay. See, this is my kind of running back room here, baby. Yeah, this is a good comment from... What the hell's going on with my mouse? Now my mouse just died. I don't think 50-50, but 70-30 in regards to Najee Warren. Yeah, I think that's what I haven't done my projections yet, but if I'm pulling something out of my ass to say what am I going to project the backfield split for, I think I would say 70 Najee, 30 Warren. Sounds about right. This is funny. Shout out Pangs. Look at all these fancy guys in this draft. Okay, I do need to pull the board down a little bit and look through some of these guys that are available. There goes Hunt. I was interested in Hunt. I think he could land somewhere that really pisses everybody off for someone that they're targeting. Let me look at run. Scroll down the board a little bit here at running back. Tyjae, Roshan, Sean Tucker, Abanikanda, Kendre Miller, Tank Bigsby. We got Zach Evans. This is a rookie, Chase Brown, rookie running back zone here. A little worried about Tyjae. I still think Tyjae can play. Really good football player, in my opinion, but just a little bit worried. I think he got up just over 200 pounds at the combine or something, but tested okay. Some of the lateral agility stuff is a little concerning. Just a little concerned about Tyjae's draft capital. He could be a good football player and just goes in the 6th round, 5th round, and just a little concerned. Dogs are concerned with Tyjae's draft capital as well. He's one of my guys. Tyjae and Kendre are two guys I really like. So I'm gonna take one of these rookies to mix in here. I think I'm gonna take Abanikanda on this team. Let's see. Josh says thoughts. Oh my God, somebody must be at my house. Literally, my wife just left, and someone shows up at my house as we're trying to finish up this draft. Thoughts on Rojo as a last round pick? Funny you should ask. Rojo almost made the core picks list. Let me search for him on the rankings. He is, I don't know if you guys can hear that, but this is hilarious. The dogs are going crazy. I have Rojo, the RB 60, 199th overall. Give me one second. Dogs love Rojo. Dogs are concerned about Tyjae. I have Rojo 199th overall in the RB 60. If we search for, so you see he goes off as the RB 74, 238th overall, basically. We'll call it. I like Rojo. Now I'm going to go reach for one of my guys. This is one of my dudes, Jerome Ford, as I mentioned. Criminally undervalued in drafts, in my opinion. There is, of course, as with anyone particularly in a backfield right now, risk with the draft, or there's still free agents, right? Kareem Hunt to free agent, Zeke a free agent. There is still risk in those guys losing what looks to be right now. Jerome Ford is clearly the backup for Cleveland, is what it looks like. That could change. That could, of course, change. But I think they let Hunt and Dearness go. I think this was part of the plan. They took Ford last year. He's probably best player available. They knew that Hunt and Dearness were going to be gone. And they're spending a whole shitload of money on Deshaun Watson and other skill players and defenders. I don't think that they're going to invest in the running back position personally. And I think that even if they do, I think Jerome Ford will still be the backup. So you have the backup who was a reasonably decent draft capital selection last year on what should be pending Deshaun Watson getting better. Should be a good offense regardless. I mean, it's been a good offense when Baker sucked, right? It's been a good offense with bad quarterback play. I can't imagine that Watson can. Maybe he can. I can't imagine that Watson can tank a team with that offensive line. Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb, Elijah Moore, David Njoku, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. And so Ford has one of the sickest contingent value upsides imaginable. They'll run a bunch of 10 personnel now with Elijah Moore, in which, shout out Lord Reeves, Rich Rebar, cited to us that this was Nick Chubb, but also part of it is the efficiency of the offense. Nick Chubb averaged 7.1 yards per carry when the Browns were in 10 personnel last season, which is mind-boggling. And so I just think the Browns are set up really well, in particular the backs. Both the backs are set up really well. And the other thing about Ford is, sorry for the Jerome Ford tangent, but he kind of answers one of the questions in chat I'll hit next. He could get again, there could be a little bit of standalone value here. I suspect, it's mostly just Nick Chubb's backfield, but Nick Chubb is never going to, be old school Le'Veon Bell or David Johnson. Maybe he can get to 75% or something, but they're just never going to play Nick Chubb every snap, nor should they, honestly. So you could get some work from Jerome Ford, standalone value from Jerome Ford in that backfield. These dogs are losing their minds. Adam says, any rookie sleepers going later? So I was going to hit, guess I might want to make my pick before we head over there. Here's one that I'm going to add to my running back room. Kendre Miller. I'm a big fan of Kendre. I think people have fairly appropriately priced up the rookie running backs and rookie wide receivers. I would guess that there's quite a few still available pretty late, but I'm just not drafting a ton of them because of kind of my strategy in these drafts, obviously. But I think that diving into this tier of running back here, right, from the Abanikanda, Roshan, Kendre, Tank Bigsby, I don't have any, honestly, I'm not going to sit here, nor do I think any of us really should sit here and say we know for certain exactly which one of these running backs it is that's going to be the man that pops out of here. But I think that they all have individual cases that make for good bets back here. So I personally like Kendre quite a bit. I used to like Tajay. I've soured a little bit on Tajay. I think Abanikanda makes a ton of sense back here as well. I do need to start looking at some tight ends here soon, huh? I've gotten most of the running backs I'm interested in back here. Let's just do it. Let's just Rojo it up. I mean, if Rojo actually gets that Zeke role, no, he's not going to get the Zeke role in terms of the passing down stuff. But if Tony Pollard is not going to play every snap, same thing. Someone else in that backfield is going to play. Forgive me if you could say this exact same thing about Rojo, but forgive me if I don't believe that it's Malik Davis. Maybe it is. But this is probably Rojo's best shot. Awesome offense. I think that they know that they need someone to do kind of what he does best. God bless him. This is insane. Dogs like Rojo too. This is what you get. This is what you get from me solo streaming when the wife is gone at this time of day. This is full-blown energy time for the dogs. Yeah, this is funny. Off the Schneid says, cut to a year ago, and we were saying a lot of the same things about Rojo. I will say, I'm more excited about. I didn't draft that much Rojo last year personally. I actually was drafting some Pacheco. Shout out to me for getting one thing right and lots of things wrong. I think this is a better spot for drafting Rojo. He's also cheaper now than at least where he ended last year. And if he gets cut, he gets cut. I'm drafting like 9 or 10. I'm drafting like 9 or 10 running backs cut to 2 years ago. And we were saying this. I think it's an interesting point. But if you don't evaluate every situation independently and ignore the fact that player has burned you, if you don't do that, I know you're fucking around. And look, I like to get shots in at Rojo too. I like to get shots in at lots of guys. But if you don't, on a serious note, if you don't evaluate each one of these situations, right? Look, this player's burned you for 2 years. It's so easy to say, and lots of people will say, nope, never drafting him again. Never, right? Imagine all the people who've drafted Kyle Pitts and Trey Lance, like me. Just, nope, never drafting Kyle Pitts again. Well, I think we actually do know that he's a pretty good football player. I feel like he's earned that at least. What does that mean for fantasy? Who knows? But if I just say, nope, never drafting him again, like you're ignoring tons of situations where it plays out differently this time, right? The Rashad Penny. 2 years ago, you said, I'm done with Rashad Penny. Dude gets hurt all the time. Can't draft him. Not doing it. And then he did get hurt. You were right. And you had no chance of winning without him in best ball. Right? And it's like, we just got to treat and I don't think Rojo's as good as Rashad Penny, to be clear. Rashad Penny is a sick runner. And is going to be awesome on the Eagles. Okay, we got 4 quarterbacks, 9 running backs, 4 wide receivers, and a tight end. I'm going to take a tight end here, and then here's one of my guys. Can someone explain to me why Hunter? I know he had I understand that there was it was not a great season for Hunter Henry last year. That happens when you bring in Tweedledee and Tweedledum to run the offense, and you don't have any really good, honestly. But now the wide receivers also are still not probably going to be awesome. I mean, Juju. What are we doing with the Juju thing? But like they brought in Mike Gesicki, who is just a wide receiver. You know what I mean? I think people are viewing, Gesicki's in there. Now Hunter Henry falls off. Hunter Henry probably, Jonnu didn't really end up posing any real threat to him over the last 2 years. They had no interest in using Jonnu after paying him an exorbitant contract. But like Hunter Henry's still a really good football player. Like I just don't totally understand why. Like I'm not saying he should go in the 14th round, but he's like going undrafted in these drafts. It's kind of crazy. Okay, let's check some running backs. All right. I am going to take a 10th running back. And here's another one of my guys. I'm just going to scroll a smidgy. We're going to take Pierre Strong. This is another guy who I just personally think is good. I know that the Patriots signed James Robinson, but I am not personally worried about James Robinson. It's certainly possible that I should be, but this is the James Robinson who no one even wanted to keep on their team last year. He was fine. Like he was a totally fine player. His rookie season or on the Jags, but he had a very serious injury, and this isn't like some super explosive player. They spent reasonable draft capital on Pierre Strong. He also showed some talent and juice last year. I think Pierre Strong might just beat out James Robinson for the backup to Ramondre. And I don't think Ramondre is going to like we saw Ramondre play every snap last season when Damian Harris was out, but I don't think that's what the Patriots want to do. So again, this is another situation where like I think people, not you guys, and I know not everybody thinks this necessarily, but people are like, oh, it's Najee Harris. He remember he was playing 99% of snaps. But like that's not how the outlook is heading into this year. And so you just saw Ramondre play 99% of snaps for a long portion of last year and was awesome. And so you're like, oh yeah, Ramondre is just going to be the guy. I don't think at all. Like, I don't know what I'll project that backfield for. That's very difficult to project at this point for sure. But I think I'll project Ramondre for less work than the average person does. And part of that is because I think Pierre Strong's good. So we'll definitely see about that. Love Stars says, I have 30% Hawkinson. He is too cheap. I have no arguments. I'm not going to hate on anybody for drafting TJ Hawkinson. This is, a fair point till Minnesota brings in a true wide receiver too, but I don't know who the hell that's going to be. Who? What wide receiver two is going to take away the Hawkinson's upside? Direct me to that dude. Because they're like, there's no free agents. And who's confident in any of these rookies are guaranteed to be a true wide receiver two that is better than TJ Hawkinson, certainly not better than Justin Jefferson. I will say, we'll get more to some sleepers later. Just remember the name Jalen Naylor. I think everybody's projecting KJ Osborne as the next man up there. I think Jalen Naylor, if they don't spend anything on a wide receiver in the draft, I think Jalen Naylor has outs to starting in 3 wide sets, maybe starting in 2 wide sets if they don't want to play Osborne on the outside. And he's good at the game. Jalen Naylor. All right, let's run down the team really fast, and then we'll get out of here. As discussed at the top, we went 0 running back. I do still firmly believe if you joined late, go back and watch the beginning to discuss the 0 running back strategy in the Superflex drafts. But I feel, some people will totally disagree with me with this draft. They'll hate it. But I love doing things like this on teams, right? So everybody's chasing the quarterback position. We go Justin Jefferson over Justin Herbert and Deshaun Watson. And then we go Tyreek Hill in the second round over Daniel Jones, Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins. Comes back around, and it's either Devonta Smith or another quarterback that I'm not very excited for. So we keep pushing these superstar wide receivers, and we come back with one more, Chris Olave. And again, there it was, him or Derek Carr or an injured Kyler. Then it comes all the way back in the 5th, and we start taking the young upside shots. Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, mix Kyle Pitts in as a tight end in the middle there. Sam Howell and Desmond Ridder. I honestly love that QB room. To be able to get those 4, to be able to get those, I have the best top 4 wide receivers. Which, when you only have to start 2, I think I have the best wide receivers in the room. John down here's got pretty Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Mike Evans. He got pretty good ones here, but I'll take Jefferson, Tyreek, Devonta, and Olave, mixing Kyle Pitts, which gives me that flexibility at the tight end spot. And then I get the 4 guys that I believe are outside of the top tiers are the guys you want to target. Richards, I'll throw, like Bryce Young's in there, Jordan Love, probably Kenny Pickett. Those guys are in there. If you want to do the 49ers, right? Lance Purdy, those guys are all in that. There's a bucket where I'm just going to draft, like I said, 4 of those dudes on this team. And I got an awesome blend of upside and just a little bit of floor, right? We know Ritter's going to start. We know Stroud is almost assuredly going to start, and Howell should. And so you get a really nice blend of upside and floor. You got your superstar wide receivers, and you got an upside tight end in Kyle Pitts, and then we just hammer mixing and matching the running backs with Khalil Herbert, Samaje Perine, Eli Mitchell, Devin Achane, Jalen Warren, Israel Abanikanda, Jerome Ford, Kendre Miller, Rojo, and Pierre Strong. So I know that some people will vomit at that running back room, and we drafted Hunter Henry in the 19th round to go with Kyle Pitts at tight end. I love that team, and I think whether or not you like those specific players or the 4-10-4-2 team, right? You can move those chess pieces around. You can do some slightly different things off of there, but I think that's a good example of how you can implement zero running back in these superflex drafts. And even when it didn't break right, I got the 108, which is like the worst spot to pick if you're wanting one of those quarterbacks. And so I even like got locked out of quarterback, but by going zero running back, it still allowed me, right, to then just hammer that next tier of the young, kind of more unproven quarterbacks to go with my superstar wide receivers, and then just take as many freaking flyers on running backs as I can and try to hit the nuts on right running backs and the flex spots. Was able to even dip my toes into the elite tight end with Kyle Pitts, right? So I forget who it was asking earlier about I would prefer to have the tight end, right? Basically got that. Didn't get it before my wide receiver 4, but got the elite tight end. So I will not be back tomorrow. Rob will be drafting tomorrow with our good friend from Roto-Grinders, TJ Zworich. They'll be back tomorrow, and then Rob and I be back on Thursday. We're getting close. We're getting close to peak summer draft season. I really appreciate you guys coming and hanging out. That was a ton of fun. Again, Rob's back tomorrow. Check out the core picks for this Superflex tournament are up on the site. Rankings are up there if you're drafting NBA playoff best ball. Those rankings are up there, and kind of a how to get started in NBA playoff best ball. Tons and tons and tons more content coming out as, man, it's almost draft season. We're a month away, basically, from Best Ball Mania 4 dropping. So it's time to start getting ready. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful rest